At the Sports History Network, we're proud to introduce you to a new sponsor for our podcasts. It's Home Field Apparel, your premium collegiate apparel brand right out of Indianapolis. They've got incredibly comfortable t-shirts, plus they're officially licensed with vintage college designs. They have over 150 plus colleges available now and always adding more. Homefield digs through the archives and history of your school to find unique logos, mascots, and moments to make thoughtful designs for your school. When you shop today, new customers can get a 15% discount off their first purchase using the promo code SPORTSHISTORY at checkout. You can learn more at homefieldapparel.com.
Great episode of the podcast coming up today as we have author Stephen Guinan coming on to talk about one of the greatest teams in football history that you may have never heard of. We will have Steve tell us all the details about his book and a team coming up in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with PigskinDispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes at PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. And once again, we're going to stare down that portal and go back in time a little bit and talk about an area of football that is, unbeknownst to many people, a very good team that happened in the 1970s and played some very good games with some very good players. And as a matter of fact, they may be one of the best teams ever to don the uniforms of the gridiron. And to have this discussion, we have an author that has written about this team, and I'll let him reveal the team to you here in a bit. And his name is Stephen Guinan. Stephen Guinan, welcome to the Pig Pen.
Thanks so much for having me. This will be fun.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this topic, which we'll get to in just a moment. But before we do, Stephen, maybe you could tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself and how you became a football fan enough to author a book on football.
Sure. Well, I'm from Toledo, Ohio. I grew up there in the 1970s, and I'd read the paper. I was learning to read and decode headlines. And my father was a big football fan. He rooted for the Lions. His background was in Detroit, so he rooted for things in Michigan. And then there was this other team named the Toledo Troopers that got a lot of headlines. The Toledo Blade covered this team. They're a group of women who played football. And that's what you did. You watched or followed this team from Toledo, which was Toledo's only professional football team as the story went. So they were really good too. And they were winning and everybody loves a winner. So we would get behind them. And then at a certain point, there was just no more headlines. They just disappeared. The league folded, but you didn't really read about that aspect. They were gone. And so, I over time, I was like, what was that? What was that team that played? And then by chance, I happened to meet the coach's son, who introduced himself as the son of the winningest coach in pro football history. And I'm like, who's your dad? Tom Landry, And he said, no, my dad coached the Toledo Troopers. So I'm like, oh, that was the team that I remember them. What happened to them? And so I got to meet him, and then I ultimately got to meet the coach himself. And then over time, I got to meet the players, and on the outside, it's a great story. Women playing football in the 1970s and being really good at it. That's the hook. But then when you go deeper and actually meet some of the players and talk to the coaches and, see pictures and film and touch the uniforms that they wore, it really becomes an untold part of history. They played from 1971 to 1979 during Bill Stout's coaching. He was 46-1. That's why they call him the winningest. It's a remarkable record. They played all around the country. They played in Dallas, Oklahoma City, New York, Cleveland, and regional too. Played Cleveland, Buffalo, and Detroit, Columbus. So it was at a time when the owners of the league really thought legitimately there could be a national football league for women, like there is the WNBA. Perhaps they were inspired by the merger in the 1960s that gave us the Super Bowl era. So, it's a story about the women who played and the coaches who played, but it's also a story about, those who dreamed a league like that could happen.
Well, it sounds extremely interesting. So let's just, for clarification purposes, let's make sure the audience knows this is not the so-called like lingerie league or anything like that. This is real football being played by young ladies that are out there in full gridiron pads, hitting, tackling, running, doing everything that their male counterparts do. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. People think the lingerie league. In fact, it was the promoter who started the league was from Cleveland, and he did imagine it to be a little more like a lingerie league. But when the Toledo team got organized and Bill Stout, got behind the team, and the players who got behind playing football, they were there to play football and to learn how to play the game as it was meant to be played, as the men were playing it. They were coached as football players, not as models or anything else. And that's one of the reasons they were so good. Yes, it's good old fashioned 11-on-11, full pads, American football.
Okay, before we get specifically into the Toledo team, let's take a 50,000-foot view here and tell us a little bit about what the league is that they played in the 70s, if you would, please.
Tell us about the league?
Yes, please.
Oh, I see. So it began with a promoter from Cleveland, started the Women's Professional Football League. I might even go 50, 60,000 feet above and look at Ohio as a place where is really the birthplace of football. And in particular, Toledo. And this is, something I learned through researching the book. I didn't realize that Toledo was one of the first NFL teams back in the 20s. And then, you look into, as the league grew, you had a number of great stars, household names that would go on to success in the pros and in college that were from Toledo. So really, Toledo can, pride itself on its history of gridiron greats, and sure enough, there's the winningest team. There were women who played. So Sid Freeman was the promoter in Cleveland, and he started the Women's Professional Football League. And then when Bill Stout and the Troopers wanted to take it a different direction, a more legitimate direction, they broke off and formed the National Women's Football League, the WNFL. So a little bit of a name confusion for some people. And he met with a group of owners from California and Dallas and Detroit and Columbus and ultimately Oklahoma City as well, Philadelphia. So these, owners attempted to build a national league. They had a commissioner, they had, divisions. They envisioned a kind of East Coast, West Coast divisional Super Bowl happening. And that happened for a few years. And so, it was at a time when many sports leagues were forming. You had the emergence of the ABA, the American Basketball Association. How about the World Football League? You guys probably have talked about the World Football League from the 70s.
Absolutely.
And so it was a time when, why not? Let's see if we can capitalize on this enormous popularity of the sport. Here's some women who are playing football, and they're really good at it. They compete at the highest level of, their sport, and it's a great product, and it should sell, or it can sell one day. So I think that's and that's happening. That story is happening to this day.
What was the professionalism level of the league? Was it a semi-pro league, or was it a fully professional where that's the only job that the players had?
Oh, no, they worked full time. They were paid if the box office, rendered it. They were maybe $25 a game sometimes. A lot of the players kept the receipts to show that, hey, I was pro. I was paid to play football. So, I mean, I'm not really sure how to get into the distinction of semi or real pro. They practice 5 nights a week. They 3 hours a night. It was the thing they loved to do. And when they went out and faced another team, they played at the highest level of their sport. And it bore out in the scoreboards, in their records. And it didn't matter if they were ahead by 5 or 6 touchdowns. In some cases, they still just kept pounding. I mean, they went out there to hit hard. They went out there to score. And if you didn't like it, try to stop them. That was sort of their attitude. They if that's what makes it professional, then that's what they were.
Well, I'm not saying, semi-professional in a negative way, because semi-professional, right. I mean, you think about, the old time football when professional football was starting, players had, and even right up till probably 40 years ago, professional players had to work another daytime job, plus practice 5-6 days a week, plus play 1 or 2 games a week. They had a pretty full plate, and it's a lot more demanding probably than some of the professional athletes of today, where they can focus in on saying, hey, I'm just going to play this game and go to my practices. They don't have to worry about, running a household and bringing home enough money for rent and everything like that by having multiple jobs in addition to playing a sport. So it's a complimentary note is what I was trying to make a point of that.
Right. Yeah, sure. I mean, sometimes pregnancies often derailed careers for some of these, their football careers. Jobs, they got a different shift that made practice difficult, things like that. They had to manage a lot of that. It's true.
Now, how was the league pretty diversified as far as, not only in race and but people's status in life of what they did, their careers and things? Is there a wide variety?
I would say so. Absolutely. You had some housewives who, or some mothers. One of the players in 1971 had just given birth 3 months prior to coming out to play, but loved playing. And, her father would take care of the child while she would go out there and play. And then you had a lot of, Toledo factory workers, blue collar people work at the Jeep plant or UPS, and then go to then hit the field. You had, Gloria Jimenez worked at a convenience store, but she was also one of 9 brothers and sisters that, migrant farm workers who picked tomatoes on the weekends. And so you really had a real spectrum of demographics, races, religions, creeds, and certainly also, and this is truly, level of, sports knowledge for a lot of the women who didn't have the experience a lot of boys have growing up playing sports and just knowing how to carry themselves around an organized system. But they would take to that real quick.
Now, that must have been a real challenge for the coach that you said that you ended up ultimately meeting. And I'm sorry, what was his name again?
Bill Stout.
Bill Stout. Okay. Mm-hmm. So Coach Stout had, probably at first had a really big job in front of him trying to harness in all this talent and these people that are from diversified lives and, different areas, different walks of life and everything, to bring them into a team building. And I'm sure that had to be quite a accomplishment on his part.
I think so. I think he's probably the main character of this story. He was a washed-up football star, high school football star. Played nose guard, all city for DeVilbiss High School, and didn't quite cut it at the college level. He still had dreams of making it big. Meanwhile, some of his pals, his former teammates, were if not starring in Ohio State Michigan games or maybe making it to the pros. They were, they had coaching careers. They coached at the University of Toledo and then other places. That, they used Toledo or their coaching and their football as a stepping stone for a career. And I think he truly thought that he could transfer his football knowledge and his football attitude into success and maybe even a career. So he took to the team and coached them the only way he knew how to play, which is, smash mouth football. And he had a good set of assistant coaches, Carl Hamilton, Jerry Davis, and his brother, Mike Stout. These guys, really instilled in the players and the women a sense of mental toughness, what you have to do. So there was conditioning, there was technique, and there was an attitude about hitting that, started at the top and carried all the way through the team. And they took to it. So yeah, it was a challenge for sure. But, it's like Carl Hamilton told me, he said one of the mantras was, if you cannot hit, you are not playing. You should go home right now. So right there, you're going to hit, and you're going to learn to hit. And, it means even protecting yourself, but that's what this game is about.
Yeah, I gathered that from looking at just the cover of your book, which, by the way, the title is, I think we failed to mention this, it's titled "We Are the Troopers, the Women of the Winningest Team in Pro Football History" by Hatchet Books. It just got released here late in August of 2022. But on the cover, you have a very interesting cover that really drew me in, because at the top you have sort of a team photograph, then you have the title of the book sort of in the middle, and down below there's like an action play that's going on, and I'm looking in the background. I'm seeing a player like really putting a lick on another player, putting a good block on her. You have a running back that's cutting a corner, finding the edge, and you have, looks like a trailing, like maybe it was a quarterback or maybe it was an option play or something coming around the end. It looks, right. I mean, it's football, definitely. And it's looks like he was well coached, because everybody's in the right position. There's nobody standing around or anything like that. So that's tremendous. I think that photograph really captures the essence of what you're saying.
Yeah. And I think that one of the joys of researching was discovering, artifacts like that tell the story. That's true. The footage of them playing it's like, they know what they're doing. They're well coached. They hit hard. They play well. And I think that I wanted that to come through in the book. So I hope I, gave people a new appreciation for this team and what women can do on a football field.
Yeah. Well, why don't we, before we go in any further, let's make sure we take this first opportunity to show people and tell people where they may get a copy of your book, We Are the Troopers.
Sure thing. Thanks. It's We Are the Troopers. You can find it anywhere you buy books. I'm sure your local bookstore will have it. You can also get it on Amazon and all the big places too. So We Are the Troopers. Check it out. There's also a documentary that I wrote with the coach's son, made by Ann Serena Films. That is, it's out there, and hopefully it'll find distribution and maybe a home. But I think that's an awesome complement to the book, because you read the book and then you can watch the documentary and actually see and hear, their voices and see what they say in their own words. It's terrific. So anyway, We Are the Troopers. You can buy it anywhere you buy books.
Okay. And listeners, if you are driving a car, don't worry about writing it down or trying to memorize the title and Stephen's name. We will have that in a link in the show notes of this very podcast. So when you get to a point where you can, exercise your thumbs and look at something, go ahead and pull up the show notes and pull it up, and that way you can get a copy of the book. And anything else that Stephen shares with us, we'll share those links as well as on pigskindispatch.com. So Stephen, going back into the team, so the Toledo Troopers, they won this league an amazing amount of times, which I know you've been telling us, and they had some pretty good players too, and one in particular. Maybe if you could share some insight on her and some of the things that the team did.
Sure. Linda Jefferson, I say she's the greatest athlete you've never heard of. To see her play, she was the game breaker. Her statistics were off the charts. She averaged about 14 yards a carry one year. She holds the record for most touchdowns.
I'm sorry, you said 14 as in 4 yards per carry? 14
yards per carry.
Wow.
And she wouldn't get, I think Bill Scott, they took care of her. They didn't, run her all the time, but when she touched the ball, a home run threat every time. And in some of the biggest games as well. They had a rivalry with Oklahoma City, who was a team that beat them once. Bill Stout's one loss was to Oklahoma City. Also, smash mouth team that could hit hard and play hard. In those biggest games, Jefferson shined. She, just was the difference maker. It's even if whatever you do to stop her, you really couldn't. She was a track star in high school. She graduated the month Title IX was signed into law. Had she graduated a year later, she probably would have gotten a scholarship to play somewhere. As scholarships to play softball, baseball, whatever, basketball, it didn't matter. She was just a tremendous athlete. super fast, but also agile, a combination of Barry Sanders and Walter Payton. Could just knew football, right? But she just knew the sport, knew how to hit the hole, knew how to see the field. Just a natural on the football field. She was women's sport, the magazine Women's Sport, a magazine of women's athletics in the 1970s, founded by Billie Jean King. She was the athlete of the year in 1975. She competed in the Superstars. Do you remember that game, that show, the Superstars from the 70s?
Yeah, I do.
Where you had celebrities and then athletes competing in different kind of Olympic style events. She competed, 3 times in the Superstars against like Martina Navratilova and Althea Gibson and Billie Jean King and all these, kind of names we recognize as incredible pioneering women athletes. She was right there. She was on the Dinah Shore show, and they kind of staged this little competition with Anthony Davis, who played at USC, who was second in Heisman voting, I believe, in 1976. He actually signed a contract to play in the World Football League. So he didn't go the NFL route. He was one of the World Football League's like maybe nascent stars. So he just signed $1 million contract, and they had Linda Jefferson and he kind of do this little race, kind of, 2 athletes going toe to toe. Of course, Jefferson wins the race, and, has really nothing to show for her really athletic supremacy. But, there were more opportunities for people like Anthony Davis. So she was just an incredible athlete and an amazing speaker, amazing character, who loved football and was a great spokesperson for the sport. And just, it's because it's such an unknown story, we don't really think about her too much. But it's if she were alive today, you'd be watching TikToks and little YouTube videos of her just tearing it up.
I know, just doing some research on her, I think every photograph that I saw of her, whether in football gear or whatever, she was always dressed with a big smile that seems to be very infectious. It's happy to look at when you see somebody as happy as that. So I can see where she would be a great spokesperson for the game and have an infectious personality. That's a good word.
She was just a natural in front of people, warm, engaging, bright, glowing, and always positive. Just an amazing person.
Now I see I saw the yardage that you're describing, the 14 yards per carry. She had like over 1,300 yards her first season. And this really caught my eye, 32 touchdowns in one season. That's pretty remarkable. You don't hear of that at all.
Right. That's right up there. LaDainian Tomlinson kind of record. Just, like I said, a home run threat every time she touched the ball. And she didn't get a ton of carries. They didn't really saddle her with that offense. Bill Stout liked to mix it up and do reverses and different types of schemes to keep defenses honest and to use some of the other weapons he had too, not just Linda Jefferson.
Well, tell us about some of the other players that played on the Troopers.
Sure. Well, some played, there were two women played all 9 years, and some played just for a year, but had, these transcendent experiences on the football field. So writing about them is kind of a balance of how do we, they were there then, but not there then. So it was kind of, I tried to string them all together in some ways. Certainly Sunday Jones is a really great character. She was about 6'2". She played basketball on a travel team that was, Olympic trained, she almost made the Olympics in 76. And on the basketball team, they called her Dr. Death because she was a headhunter. I mean, she just had a mean streak in her on the football field. And there's footage of her just leveling running backs and taking them down, whipping them around. So, there's that, I don't know, I want to say to put it into that era, like a Jack Tatum type of, a fearsome safety coming in from the safety position, just coming up and just killing it. And then at night, she was a nightclub singer. She had, she was known for her singing. Like she would, in the locker room, she would bust out into song and just a beautiful voice, crooning voice. and she would do, routines at the Peppermint Club in Toledo. So just a really interesting character there. And, she passed in 2012, so she's no longer with us, but, there are other characters who populate. I mentioned Gloria Jimenez, who's, she played for the Troopers for 8 years, and then now she played for the Furies, which was the kind of, which the Troopers kind of folded and then became another organization. And then now there's the Toledo Reign. Mitchie Collette is, first got her start with the Troopers, played for 6 years in the Troopers, and then kind of became sort of a manager coach for the Furies, and now for the Toledo Reign. She's like the matriarch of women's football, not just in Toledo, but in a larger sense. She's known around the league as just an advocate for women's football, but always speaks really, endearingly about the time she had when she was, forging her football career as a Trooper.
Huh, amazing. I love some of those names too. Those are football names, and you're hearing that, Dr. Death and Sunday Jones and some of the others. Those sound great
names. Gloria Jimenez, Verna Henderson, Olivia Flores, just great, athletes in their own right. Pam Schwartz played all 9 years, was, part of a big family growing up. Kind of a lot of the women talk about like how they kind of got rough and tumble upbringing with a lot of brothers and sisters, and knew how to play aggressively and fight and push and be physical, and so they found an outlet for that, found a place in football where it wasn't discouraged, but it was actually what you needed to do to be good. So a lot of them tell that story.
Interesting. So, okay, maybe in a nutshell, I'm sure it was probably different each season, but at what time of the year did these women play, and how many games would they play in an average season?
Sure. In 1971, I think they had only 4 games as the league grew, and then 72 they played 9 games. One of them was in Texas Stadium. They played the Dallas Bluebonnets. It was kind of the culmination of that year, right after the stadium had opened. And then there was that shift between the Sid Friedman's league and Bill Stout's league. So 74 was a shorter season. I think there were only 4 games that season, but then the kind of women's, the NWFL started to take off, and they would play 8 to 10 games from 1974 to 1979. They play in the fall, September, October, November, December. The championship in 1976 was at the Glass Bowl in Toledo in December, and it was a horrifically cold day. It was like the Cowboys Packers game in 60 was at 65 in Lambeau. That was like minus, below zero wind chill. It was below zero wind chill against the Oklahoma City Dolls, a kind of a knockdown, drag 'em out game, decided by one controversial point. So, that was kind of their season. They tried to run it alongside the NFL and college games. They played at night, often at night, Saturday nights. And, after Friday Night Lights football, then you had Saturday Night Lights, WNFL was sort of their plan. And it was before there was a really prime time showcase for football. Now we see, football at night. It's, it's the prime time slot, going back to Monday Night Football. But back in the 70s, football was a day game. That's when football took place. Even the Super Bowls were in the middle of the afternoon.
Well, that's quite a testament to these ladies that are playing, and the league organizers and the league itself. I mean, if you're going in, especially in Toledo, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but Toledo, the Troopers are the only professional team at the time, pro football wise, but you have a lot of pro football around you, like you described. Detroit's not that far, Cleveland's not that far, Cincinnati's not that far, and you've got some big time college programs too. And I'm sure probably between Ann Arbor and Columbus, you're probably the center point, and I'm sure probably the city's somewhat divided on who their loyalties are to in that big rivalry. So to have a women's league on Saturday evenings with all the other competition going on, even in the 70s, I mean, that's quite a tremendous attribute, not to mention all the high school games going on, like you said. So that's
absolutely. That's a good point. Toledo, it really shares its allegiances with all those cities you mentioned. I grew up kind of a Tiger fan, kind of a Lion fan. Then Michigan, Ohio State is also split right down the middle in Toledo. But still, I think the Toledo Press and the Blade writers, there were a group of Blade writers and a group of local newscasters who really supported the league, and they gave them ink, space in the paper, and said this is a legitimate, wrote it as a legitimate enterprise. Women are playing football and they're winning, and they had the box scores and the headlines and the beat writers covering the team. So it was I think the city prided itself on having a hometown winner. While they were sharing a lot of other allegiances. Hey, this is Toledo, this is us.
Yeah, that's. I failed to even mention you have the University of Toledo there too. That's playing some big time football. So that's
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, kudos to that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on here and telling us about this story. And let's tell everybody once again what the title of your book is and where they can get it. And again, if you want to leave your social media for listeners.
Sure. Well, We Are the Troopers. You can do it, find it that way. And wherever you buy books. Thanks so much. You can find me on Twitter, Guinan, it's Sguinan, and from there you can find the homepage and the links to things, and even a link to buy T-shirts if you want, or for the Trooper. So there's some memorabilia from the Troopers if you're interested. But anyway, We Are the Troopers will get you all you need. Thanks so much for talking to me. This is so interesting.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on here. Stephen Guinan, author of We Are the Troopers. Great book. Make sure you check it out at the outlets that Stephen has described to us. And we appreciate you, sir, for taking this time today to share this story and write the book to share this story with us to help preserve gridiron history. So thank you.
Thanks, Darren.
That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
It was just another ordinary day in the offices of the Pittsburgh Guardian newspaper circa 1924. But for Marla Delft, assistant editor, everything was about to change. For she was about to discover the awesome attractiveness of Row 1 brand retro sports paraphernalia items thanks to Orville Mulligan, sports writer.
And there it is.
Wow, Orville, that's really the bee's knees.
Isn't it just? A poster-sized replica of the actual 1909 World Series program cover.
I can see that. But where did you get it? And where'd you get it framed?
I ordered it from the Row 1 website, where over 6,000 items of sports memorabilia from the 1880s to the 1990s are available for reproduction, in multiple sizes and in several different materials, with over a dozen styles of frame to choose from for prints like this.
Well, I'm sure Mr. Delft would love to put up more of these in the office. But I'm equally as sure they're beyond this newspaper's budget.
Not at all, my dear Marla. See for yourself. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com/row1.
sportshistorynetwork.com/row1. Oh my, these are good prices. Oh, and look at this stuff. Oklahoma-Nebraska football, college basketball art, Michael Jordan items.
And so
retro
it was that
sports
Marla Delft
advertisement
discovered the
placards.
splendiferous magic of Row 1 sports memorabilia, arts, and prints. You can too by visiting sportshistorynetwork.com/row1. That's ROW1. #1 today for access to the full Row 1 catalog of gallery prints and gifts like t-shirts, long-sleeve shirts, telephone cases, coffee mugs, blankets, pillows, towels, and even shower curtains. Act today for 15% discount off all prints with coupon code SHN15 and 20% off all other items with coupon code SHN20 at checkout. And keep your dial locked to the Sports History Network for the exciting chronicles of the 1920 sports world in Orville Mulligan, Sports Writer. Coming soon.